But are you ready to start talking?
Rolling.
That sounds like an interrogation. He's not talking yet. Oh, he'll talk.
He'll talk. He'll talk. Put that really bright light in front of his eyes and then he'll start talking.
And then you go like, I can't see anything. Oh, I'm sorry. I turned it down.
Well, now I'm blind and I can't, and I don't want to talk. So there you go.
Oh, we went about this the wrong way. Now, a little history for listeners. Back before Chris took his break through the later months of last year, because we take turns each episode, one of us picks our main topic, or if we have a guest, the guest picks it. He had originally said, let's talk the movie Coraline. And by the time he was back on and I said, do you want to go back to the Coraline pick, he wanted to expand it a bit. And I say that like that was a bad thing. Oh, Chris wanted to expand it. No, I'm happy. But he suggested not just Coraline, but the other movies by the animation studio Laika, a fairly, compared to other studios, kind of a newer, in some ways, contender in feature film animation.
At least in the realm of what it tries to do in storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was also just talking chronology, but that's a matter of debate too because of their history. Because interesting thing, Laika is kind of a successor company to another studio who people our age might be familiar with some of the work of, that being Will Vinton's studio. If you ever heard the term back in the day, claymation, the founder of the studio, Will Vinton, was kind of the guy who made some of those popular stop motion stuff back then. Stuff like the California Raisins and other commercials. I know he did some holiday specials that I saw on like Disney Channel. That trippy Mark Twain movie, a healthy variety of stuff. Oh, that rabbit in Michael Jackson's Moonwalker movie. That was him.
Yeah, that was a thing.
That was a thing. Michael Jackson was a thing, and I love his music. But what happened was I'm sure this was in small part to the rise of CG animation, because before that, like, stop motion was the only way to do some sort of like legit three-dimensional animation. And I believe he was having trouble finding funding later on in like the late 90s, and the people who invested and kind of bought the company, and I still do. It is a guy named, I have his name right here, because there's two of them. It's him and his son works there. Phil Knight. This guy is the founder of Nike, so needless to say, he has quite a bit of pocket change. Yeah. And his son, Travis Knight, was already working at Vinton, so I think he was motivated to help out the whole company as a result. But for various reasons, Vinton ended up being fired from it, and I think he even sued to remove his name from the company because of that. And I think he set up another independent studio elsewhere. I don't know what he's done lately. And so it was changed and kind of revamped into a new studio called Laika, named after the Russian dogs and space. Random choice, but it's a cool name. And apparently they did consider or try dabbling in CG work alongside stop motion early on, but I guess for whatever reason that didn't pan out for them, so they closed that division, and now they're pretty much like the biggest name in theatrical stop motion in the U.S.
Pretty much. It was around ParaNorman one day decided to. Oh, it was after Coraline that they basically shut down their computer animation department.
And I think they did like a short or two, and nothing huge came of it.
Yeah, and they concentrated mostly on stop motion by the time ParaNorman was out.
Yeah, and good for them, because one, it's a field that can definitely use more representation in Hollywood these days. Same goes for 2D. Like, I think I said in the past that I like all forms of animation, but it's nice to have variety in how you make them. So kudos to like we're doing that, and that is no small task, because like I've watched these like videos and read articles about how like all the intricacies that have to go into stop motion because you're working with all these physical elements. That just sounds like the most time-consuming thing in the world.
Animation is tedious by nature.
All of it is, but like stop motion sounds like the most tedious and the easiest to screw up.
On a completely different level in that regard, and I love it for the amount of focus that an artist has to really go through in order to make something look super beautiful. Because if you mess up during while you're animating your scene,
did you ever see the episode of South Park where the boys try and make their own Christmas special?
I did not see that.
It references that original like student film Parker and Stone made that actually was done with like stop motion construction paper, and that was such a nightmare for them that the show's been CG because of that. And so there's a part where like they spend a half hour on one shot, and then Carmen accidentally sneezes it all off the desk, and Stan just screams.
Okay, the shot is finally set up. Now shoot the O-mouth for 2 frames. Cartman! Well, I'm sorry, I have a code. That took us half an hour to set up, fat ass.
God. Oh, Jesus.
And this is that, but in full 3D. Like, you've got all these characters, you've got all these props, you got to figure out, you got to take camera motion into account. And I think there are like automated computer software to help with that nowadays. That were like, I think they started to pioneer back in The Night Before Christmas days. And speaking of that, if you do not know the name Henry Selick, you've likely seen something he's done. He is
film.
A stop motion veteran. He directed Nightmare Before Christmas, not Tim Burton. That's a common misunderstanding. Then James the Giant Peach, then Monkey Bone, but I won't hold that against him. But he got back to stop motion roots after that. But, well, before we get to the movies, do you have anything else you want to say about the studio and stop motion?
I honestly do not at this point.
And do you have any?
The film,
go ahead.
For themselves in that regard, I'm really kind of excited to talk about them.
Me too. This was a good excuse to go back and revisit because now I'll say it so far. We're just going to list. We already agreed we're going to go through each movie chronologically and just talk about do what we do when we do show retrospectives, and just we'll say what we want to. We'll probably go in some funny tangents, and warning, spoilers for all 4 of these. And I'm just going to say up front, all 4 of these are worth watching to varying degrees. So I'd say if you have any interest in seeing some of them, go do that first, or at least skip over, because I always put timestamps, skip over the ones you haven't seen. At the moment, because the way I watch them is I own ParaNorman on Blu-ray. Coraline and Kubo and Two Strings are both on Netflix right now, and all of them can obviously be like, through most digital marketplaces, be bought or rented in HD. That's how I rewatch Boxtrolls. So let's go with the first one, that being Coraline. I'm going to assume that you're going to put like the intro song from Coraline right in that little break right there. Yes, I will say one thing about this, that is like this might have my favorite overall soundtrack of a Laika movie. 2 things to note about it is that this is, I think, their only movie that is an adaptation, because Neil Gaiman wrote, I believe, like a book for younger readers compared to his normal work. And
didn't he? Wow,
yes.
I completely forgot about that.
I haven't read it, so I don't know how much this does or doesn't diverge from it, but I also haven't heard anything about him like being upset with how this turned out. And to be fair, authors can also be happy when they make changes too. It's entirely subjective. But on its own, this is a really cool and unique and interesting flick. The other thing I want to note is that it all has a reputation not just as a good movie, but as probably one of the creepiest family films of the modern film generation.
I can't. I know we have friends that are kind of wigged out by the button eyes and the creepy dad hands that
this piano plays me.
Oh, that was something
funny thing.
else.
The dad's singing voice is one of the guys from They Might Be Giants.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Super sweet, man. This film, I mean, like, it started out right off the gate like your standard, it's going to be a creepy film. It starts out rather magical. Like it starts out with like that very serene song at the beginning.
Yeah, like there's a children's chorus, kind of a folksy sound to the instruments. And that doesn't surprise me because I looked at the composer, a guy named Bruno. I actually don't know how to say his last name. It's like Collet, but he has done some other animated movie soundtracks. The one that stuck out to me is Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, which are soundtracks with very kind of folksy vibes to fit their, Irish Celtic settings.
And those are beautiful films by themselves.
Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about them someday, and I recommend them both.
Yeah, but Coraline, like that started the ball, and it's very it's all the advances in technology that each film brings, either from the use of cameras, use of computer animation, the use of digital editing techniques,
environments,
how artists go about practicing their craft on each individual model. Coraline is probably the oldest one, but it's still really fucking beautiful in that regard.
All their movies look wonderful. Whatever issues I bring up with them, they're generally not with the visuals. But so I mentioned the background music, and you were talking about the setup. Like, this is definitely their closest one to, you hear the saying modern fairy tale a lot. This is a modern fairy tale, like straight up, in its setup and structure, and down to like the fact that just we're talking about this serenity of like that intentional contrast between the regular world and the fake parallel world made by the other mother.
Yeah. Whenever I look at magical-esque films, they always show real life in a kind of stilted, kind of mundane way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look particularly beautiful, or it doesn't look particularly awe-inspiring.
Another stop-motion movie that does that, Corpse Bride, like that's intentionally like the world of the living is the dreariest, grayest thing, and the world of dead might as well be a nightclub.
But the way Coraline does it, and I think this is because of how stop motion lends itself to film. Boring aspects of real life that Coraline has to through in order to like feel alive or feel loved. Even that is really visually impressive. Like just seeing like the subtle nuances and characters just like the way they're designed and move, like all of like they have a super stylized approach to characters, sometimes like intentionally ridiculous, like those two retired actresses. Oh God,
one of them like I never thought I'd make a Xenoblade comparison. Her chest is freaking huge, and it's not done for fan service either. There's nothing about the character like that. It's just a quirk.
Definitely, like those are gravity physics happening there.
Well, especially when you see the other versions of them, like that's defying gravity.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like the entire film is fun to watch and very mesmerizing. That's the one thing I got to give Laika as far as how they build their stories. They definitely respect characters are portrayed, and they're very much in. They have a large love for the worlds that they create.
They do have. I feel like they have a good commitment to world building. Like even when we get to ParaNorman, which is 100% set in modern day world, that still has a feel and atmosphere to its setting. But yeah, there's a lot of. It's not just the world that with the parallels in this movie. Like they do a good point of like showing you just like her parents look miserable in their design. The dad looks like bags under his eyes. The mom has like a neck brace. I think they mentioned she had an accident or something. And then compared with the others, where it's like they're all bright and bouncy. And of course, that is just to drive the eventual point home that this is something too good to be true. And that's where things get creepy.
Coraline herself, I got to be honest, I don't like her character. Probably,
she is a legit brat for like the first half of the movie.
Yeah, and I say that because number one, I tend not to like kid characters very much unless they're done well. Mm-hmm. But number two, and I think we've had this conversation before as well, is that personally, I was born in a home that wasn't particularly rich or very well off. So seeing Coraline basically kind of like thumb her nose to her parents because she's not getting the shoes that she wants, or not.
You know what's funny? I remember the first time I saw this movie, because I actually had not seen it since it was in theaters years ago, like in 2009ish or whatever. It wasn't anything against the movie, of course. I just didn't get around to it. But I remember feeling like Coraline's mom is kind of a bitch for most of the movie. And now here's the thing. She is kind of mouthy. They both are. But one, Coraline is being bratty most of the time. And two, the mom is mellowing out as the movie goes on. Like, comes a point where she's trying to encourage her, like, get excited about the new school and saying, like, if you do this for me, we can do some of the stuff you want to later. And Coraline is still mouthing off to her. So I'm like, I mean, at the same time, I feel like that's kind of realistic. Like, and also helps that initial conflict. Like, even the best parents are not happy and getting along with you 100% of the time. That's just human nature.
Best parents probably don't like their kids very much. Like that's real life, and I hate to say it that way, but there are times when parents may not like their kids in that moment.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure I've done that I'm sure that put my parents through that, and I'm sure if I'm ever a dad, I'll be put through that. And it doesn't mean that they dislike you overall or anything. That's just human nature.
The film does a good job in saying that Coraline isn't this magical girl like Matilda was. She has her own problems. And
she isn't a sweet angel. And some of it is being influenced by it's a cliche in movies, but it's a real problem. Like kids don't really like it if you have to abruptly move somewhere. That touches on like she has old friends in school and stuff, and it's just the fact that it is kind of an initially dreary environment and the other tenants are super weird. You do kind of get her even if you don't agree with her being a brat.
Yeah, the fact that the way that she vents to YB, or why were you born? And when she said that, I was like, he's just trying to make friends. What's wrong with you?
I liked YB, so that was definitely out of line for me.
But it was out of line for me as well. But it shows that her character, number one, ain't perfect, and number two, a lot of the bullshit that happens is because of her. Mm-hmm. So when she goes into the magical world where she meets her not mom and her not dad,
the other parents,
the other parents, and then she realizes that, oh, this place is great. Oh, I don't have to live here. I don't have to live in the real world anymore. Oh, I have to sew buttons in my eyes.
That's the turning point. That is both when the shift from paradise to creepy danger happens, and that's when the movie as a whole becomes way more sinister. Like as that facade, I almost said facade, that facade starts to crumble, and you start realizing like everything but the other mother is her creation and what she does to them, and like the last half hour of this gets like nightmarish. Like I wrote a list. Okay, the one I remembered is, now first off, there's the other YB who doesn't talk because Coraline doesn't like the real one mouthing off. And then you realize, like, at one point she sees that the other mother stitched a forced smile onto him, and the other dad says something like, he mouthed off, and so she punished him. And then later, like the last, and because he helps her escape, the last thing you see is she goes up and hits his skin, like waving like a flag in the wind, like she just killed and drained him for caring for Coraline.
It's fucking hell.
These are sentient things she's creating, and they are all just in service of her, and if they don't help her achieve her goal, she kills them. And then there's seeing the other, like when that dad is like decomposing, he's getting all fat, his voice is getting all deep and lethargic, and by the time he fights her in the giant mantis, his last words are just like, I'm sorry. I remember too. Like what he was doing at that point was against his will.
For a few days, I could not shake that. Like seeing the other dad, like have those arms basically like use him and throw him around like that.
Nothing but a slave at that point. And the other tenants, like how the ashes were like part candy, just this big blob, or how the mouse trainer was eventually just made of the rats, like weird stuff like that.
So who voiced the cat? Do you remember who voiced the cat?
Yes, I thought you would remember of all people. Do you really not remember?
Ooh, but I'm not seeing it on the Wikipedia
Keith
page.
David.
It is Keith David. Okay.
Goliath.
He's not
Uncle
listed
Daddy
on,
Boyfriend number one. He's not listed on what?
He's not listed on Wikipedia under
That's a
the
crime.
starring.
That's a crime.
That's a hate crime.
It's a cool kind of modern equivalent of the Cheshire Cat, and because the excuse is he knows how to travel between these worlds. So obviously, in our world, he's a regular cat, but there he has the ability to talk, and he's kind of a veteran with the other mother's antics. He's
really fucking cool, and I love his character. In fact, that he wasn't necessarily loyal to Coraline.
No, I think he kind of felt you kind of get the feeling like he feels he's just along for the ride, and he'll fight back if he absolutely has to. But he's just kind of interested in observing it and maybe giving Coraline some advice.
That's one thing I like about Neil Gaiman's works, is that he has a very good way of creating, let's say, riddle me this characters, but he gives characters their own motives, and they're not necessarily good or necessarily evil.
Yeah, and I did. Well, you don't get the idea that the cat is going to do anything to help the other mother, but he's not a full-on sidekick. Like, I'm loyal to you. It's just like, I'll tag along, and I don't like mice and rats, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. It's wow. I'm getting nostalgia shivers just thinking about.
Okay, Coraline. You know what? I'll tell you the scene that was the most creepy to me, and it's literally like the end of the main conflict, which is when she finally. Like, the other mother's main real form is already pretty creepy. This, like, spindly, spider-ish woman with, like, these grotesque, like, extra legs and stuff. Crumbling face. Like, I kind of wonder if we never actually see her 100% real face, because there's still signs of the actual mom in disguise in it. But when she finally gets through the tunnel, and, like, the tunnel starts shaking, compressing itself, and you just hear the other mother shrieking, "Don't leave me! I'll die without you!"
Oh, yeah.
That is not just creepy. That's terrifying. That's out of a proper horror movie.
Also kind of sad, too. Like, when I think...
I would pity her more if not for the fact that we know she killed other kids and she was she was imprisoning and possibly killing the real parents. Like, she's evil, but she does it out of loneliness. Still no excuse.
And that's why I think it's rather sad, because what if she did things a little differently?
Yeah, what if she was genuinely friendly and trying to get kids and friends and stuff? But, I mean, the fact that she's this otherworldly character and they don't go into her origins and that kind of stuff, because that's not the point. It's interesting. Two other things I want to say that I remember about seeing this in the theater. Because did you see this in the theater?
Totally did, yes.
You did? Okay, yeah. I saw it with a cousin of mine, Anthony, who's a good friend. I much I would like to invite him on the show. He lives pretty far from here, so I doubt that'll happen anytime. But I remember because there is one more little brief scare at the end where the hand comes out and the ghosts are talking to her. Yeah. And he turned to me and went, "Are they setting up a sequel?" If you didn't know any better, you might think until YB actually stops the hand and stuff that they might be. The other thing is, do you know if you saw the movie in 3D?
3D, no.
I don't usually see movies in 3D, but that one I did. I think it was just at the time we arrived, that was the first one available. And that actually, because at the end, the idea is that the fake world starts to disappear, dissolve and fall apart, because it was the other mother's creation for Coraline. And I swear to God, watching those I had an accent for a second. Watching those shots of those black pieces coming apart with that white void behind it in 3D, that is amazing. It's like a legit dust cloud of these pieces coming at you. And it was worse in the movie in 3D just for that approach. I know that people have said that the How to Train Your Dragon movies are phenomenal in 3D because they do the same approach with the clouds when flying.
For that.
I didn't see those in 3D, but I know they're doing a third one. Maybe I'll see that in 3D. So those are my main things. And any other points that we haven't brought up that you would like to about this?
There was a point where I didn't. There was a point where I felt a little out of touch with the movie, where the movie kind of threw me out of the story, essentially. Where this was around a time when, I guess, late 2000s, when games were starting to borrow narratives with video games, and there's a little bit of overlap.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
There's a point where Coraline or where the ghost kids are like, you got to collect 3 of these things. And she's like, good, I got one. Now I got to go get 2.
And they literally, when she picks one up, you hear the ghost say, you found me, only 2 left. It's straight out of Zelda.
Coraline to just turn to the camera and go, here we go.
No. She should have held it up floating above her hands, and it goes da na na na.
Da, na, na, na. I would have died if I did that. I would be like, nope, I don't need to see anything more.
I remember that was something critics pointed out at the time. It was an odd thing structurally to incorporate. Even though I know there was a Wii game, maybe that would have influenced the movie. What am I kidding?
It didn't.
Or maybe gaming originally included. I don't know.
Threw a couple people out the movie. So I think by the time ParaNorman came along, they kind of, I can't even say they learned their lesson there, because they kind of didn't.
Kubo incorporates that too, but in a less in-your-face way, I feel. Because it's a bit more spread out.
Other than that, I did like Coraline. I love and respect it a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot that it tries to do, and it succeeds.
Yeah, and I do also just want to give a shout out, because Patrick, I did talk to him about this. I think he has seen Coraline and ParaNorman, not the other 2, but he did want to. I believe he said Coraline is legit one of his favorite modern animated movies, period. And he does like cartoons, but not to the same level as us. He's more interested in stage acting and general film and theater. But I think it says a lot that Coraline still had a lot to offer him. And I think it has a lot to offer all ages, even though we've talked about how creepy it gets. If you're someone who wants to show this a kid 6 or under, watch it with them, because they might ask you to turn it off.
Yeah, there's a lot of really dark imagery in Laika movies and concepts, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about the darker aspects in some of their other movies. That's going to be a big thing I want to bring up in at least 2 of them. But are you ready to move on?
So,
all right. So chronologically, I think it was through 2 or 3 years later. I don't remember if it was 2011 or 2012, but we got ParaNorman, the second Laika movie. And I don't know if this is a common response, but this is actually my favorite of theirs.
I can see that. And you know what? When I saw ParaNorman, it was one of the first movies I actually saw dating Serena.
I loved it. Yeah.
Did she enjoy it?
Yeah, she did.
Okay, good.
We liked.
I'm just imagining an alternate
ParaNorman
universe where she didn't like it, and you just look at her like, "You're not the one for me."
We're just like, no, this is a sign. We enjoyed it. We had issues with it, but we definitely thought it was we definitely thought very positively about it.
Yeah, I feel like there's just a lot of things about this that I feel like make it click for me. I think it's probably their funniest movie. Like, all the movies have elements of humor, but this is the one that I feel like maybe this and Boxtrolls are the ones that go for it the hardest while still mixing darker and sadder elements. And I also just like how all these character interactions build over time, because the fact that Norman basically built up this little troupe of misfits kind of just by accident, and or like he starts out with he's kind of a class misfit, so another misfit like kind of latches onto him. Then when the threat happens, he ends up having to team up with his longtime bully, and then the other misfit's brother tags along, and Norman's sister tags along because she has the hots for him, and we will definitely get to the punchline of that. But just the fact that you have all these very funny, they're exaggerated characters, not just designed by personality, but I feel like it kind of works to the benefit of the jokes and how they work off each other.
Yeah.
And I also just, I talked about aesthetics and world building. Like, this is their one movie that is 100% set in our world, though it has outlandish elements in it. There's all this seaside town, this very modest thing that relies on its local legends of a witch and stuff. But both the environments are very, they have it's a weird way to describe it, but humble. Like, they have a real lived-in feel. There are elements that are sagging. There's a decent amount of debris and junk around it, but it doesn't feel like trash or a dirty place. It feels like just a regular, modest little town. And I feel like this is a movie that they might go for the most really over the top character designs. Like, some of them are even kind of intentionally semi grotesque. I remember the one thing I remember seeing this in theaters was when you first see Norman's mom, who was middle aged. Her face is kind of drooping a bit. Some girls, a few rows down from me, just went ugh, audibly.
Well, that's what I like about the character designs. They don't. Whenever we think about animation in general, we always think about characters that always visually look appealing, or they visually look like that they're got to be pretty all the time. They look like mannequins and movie stars. Yeah, I
remember when this movie came out, people made a comparison. Some guy on Tumblr made a post kind of comparing it to the Frozen designs, which I don't think are bad designs or no, but he talked about how they kind of have just a samey approach. Like, you can compare Elsa and her parents. Their parents, they're kind of the same face with minor differences. And then in ParaNorman, it's all over the place. Like, he pointed out, you can kind of see that the mom is probably going, the sister's going to look like 20, 30 years.
Love
stuff
that. Yeah, I love that kind of thought process where people are varied and they have different shapes about them. And
some characters' heads are straight up vertical. Like, they're vertical cylinders. It's crazy. I also kind of wonder with certain characters how they got the figures to stand up, because you have Mitch, the jock brother, and the Casey Affleck character. His upper half is beefcake, huge, and his legs are so spindly.
Love that design.
There has to be some technical trick on how that did not just crush the model's legs. Like, maybe they made the legs of more durable material or something.
What I love about ParaNorman is that they start thinking about animated films in more of a cinematic kind of way.
Yeah.
But and Rango did that for me too. But ParaNorman really set the stage for me when the movie started and you saw it was kind of like a parody of super cheesy zombie film.
Oh, yeah, he's watching an old zombie movie with bloopers in it, like the boom mic hits the screaming girl, but also the fact that Laika and the distributors' logos are shown in kind of grainy, synthy neon looks.
The way that it started out with that parody was on point for those old kind of films.
It clues you in on some of the vibe, because even in the actual story, there are a lot of intense scenes with zombies where they're just doing the straight up synth music out of a John Carpenter film.
But right after that happens, and it's time for Norman to go to school.
Yeah,
you like the way that it starts with that very, and I hate to use the word serene music, but
I love the leitmotif track that you kind of hear throughout the calmer scenes. Da, da, da.
And the camera, the way that they set that camera, where you see like the little neighborhood that he's in, and there's a lot of, you see the natural decay of the life that he's in and the everyday process that he goes through, and the way that the camera kind of veers out and reveals that he's not some crazy kid. He's seeing a bustling neighborhood that no one else sees.
Oh, yeah. The fact that you're seeing stuff that is technically very morbid, like he's walking by the ghost of a mobster with cement shoes. I think somebody's meant to be Amelia Earhart, because the female pilot impaled on a branch.
But like, oh my God. And he's
but it's literally like any other movie where they're walking, saying hello to their neighbors. Like, hey, how you doing? Just because he's so used to it.
Love that.
It's helping put you in his vibe. Like, because that's kind of also the theme of this movie when you get further down its plot, is of people's tendencies and fears to reject or persecute what is abnormal.
It's a tad on the nose, but personally, I love preachy tad on the nose stuff.
I do. So, it's entertaining. I thought this was entertaining.
Yeah. Well, if it's entertaining, sure, and a lot of people do it in an entertaining way. What ParaNorman in that regard is that it does it without trying to dress it up in a sugary kind of way.
Yeah. Did you lean away from your mic? You went a little quieter.
I did not, but I will lean closer to my mic.
Okay, you're good now.
What ParaNorman? If you didn't hear what I said,
no, I heard you. Keep going. I'll edit it.
Frames its world and its characters is that this is definitely the real world, and there's definitely like really creepy supernatural shit going down. Make it look like that. We're not going to dress these characters to look like that they're essential Disney properties. These are characters with flaws, and they look like it physically. And the fact that this small boy is talking to a spiritual John Goodman in a bathroom,
John Goodman is
he's
great.
Wondering whether or not he should drop the F-bomb in the bathroom, was brilliant.
Oh yeah, I want you to swear like the F word. This is, I feel like in terms of the actual jokes, this is their most risque movie. Like one of the first lines when he walks out of the zombie movie, like he's like, "What are you watching?" He goes, "Sex and Violence."
Love that.
No, one of my favorites is, I think the best friend is Neil, the chubby kid, and when like he's watching TV and he's like, "Can you get the door? Hang on. Are you free streaming mom's workout videos again?" No. And then it cuts. Free stream, just like ass. Right up, shoved into that camera frame of some.
Neil,
so good.
Get the door. I'm busy.
Yeah. Oh, and then a minute later, when Courtney, the sister, because obviously she's has the hot for Mitch, and when he looks away, she like unzips her top a few inches.
That was phenomenal. Like this show, This movie is so on point with capturing instances of people doing really silly, stupid, but very personable things.
Yeah. Oh, even smaller characters like that school play teacher who is way too invested in the speech and talks like a stereotypical like operatic lady. Like, they hung her for crimes.
The founding fathers of Blythe Hollow discovered an evil witch amongst them.
No, Norman, with gusto, like this. They put her on trial and hanged her. But the vengeful witch cursed her accusers, 7 of them in all, to die a horrible and gruesome death.
Apparently voiced by Lois Griffin.
Wow, really?
Alex Borstein. She's done other things. She was on Mad TV. She was a Power Rangers villain. Yeah.
Love that. So the point where the kids are basically droning on in their lines for that school play, and when she has to show them how to portray the character, I love how she rolls her eyes, flings the script nonchalantly, and instantly goes into character.
Yeah, and at the same time, she says a line in the same scene. She's like, "No, this is just old postcards." Like she's both well aware of the cynical nature of it, but she's so into it, even though it's so obvious she's never going to get that same passion out of those kids.
I dig that. I dig like those. Oh, okay.
Okay. Now let's talk there's some other things to talk about it.
Sure, but
go ahead.
And I'm going to try and segue into what you're about to say, hoping that we're about to make the same point.
Let's see.
But all right, so the really minor elements that seems movie does an does an exceptional job at showing a lot of strife characters and not making it seem like a throwaway thing. When Norman basically goes fucking bananas and during the play, and the whole Silent Hill happens in his mind, him home, and the reasonable, predictable thing for a family film to do is for characters to show a little frustration, but to be on the side of the kid. To see the dad basically
go off
and verbally wish that his son was normal.
Yes. The mom is more what you're talking about, but she's not able to raise Norman's spirits after that.
She doesn't have the power to stand for him. And the dad is just like, ugh.
The dad's definitely the more like loud and forceful of the two.
His voice, like, he kind of hates this kid. And it's like, but he didn't do anything.
Well, to them, it appears that he just made a scene. So it sucks. But yeah, actually, do you know who voiced the dad?
Who voiced the dad?
I don't know his name, but he's one of the main characters on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But in terms of animation, he was the voice of the ship captain in WALL-E.
It's him, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mutiny. He's got a big voice. He's a big guy when I've seen him in that, so it makes sense. And some other fun, recognizable in this. Like I think Anna Kendrick is great in this. She's the kind of a great person to cast as a stuck-up, snooty cheerleader type sister. The craziest one is who voiced the bully Alvin?
Who voiced the bully?
That was McLovin.
Lovin?
Superbad. The super geeky one. Yeah. Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Yeah, that kid. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of
kick-ass villain. He pops up and stuff, and that's kind of against type for him because you think he's going to always be geeky roles, but it kind of fits because Alvin's kind of a pathetic guy also because he's someone who you get the sense he's very egotistical, but he's just a dumbass. And
there's a lot of really, that's the word I'm looking for. Laika's not afraid to shy away from pathetic characters. Not in the sense
Especially
where they're built to, they're not in the sense where they're built to be strong archetypes, but you can see just how really weak they are, and I love that so much.
Yeah, like you get the sense from Norman the whole movie that he's kind of insecure and unsure of himself, his posture, the way that kid delivers his lines. But you get why. You should see how much he's been shit upon in the early sections. So it's kind of it's a movie that you feel genuinely happy for his victory at the end because it feels earned and cathartic, considering that we've seen what he's gone through.
Yeah, and the way that Norman is portrayed is used to it.
Yeah. He goes and Alvin's written graffiti on his locker, and he just immediately takes out a rag and wipes it off.
He's so used to it that there's a part of him that kind of doesn't want to let that life go. It's normal for him.
Well, he kind of, it probably made him doubt himself. But you do get a little sense. There are there are obviously some hints that he is also, his interests lie in quirky stuff by his family standards. He's a horror obsessed kid. He watches B movies. He has a bunch of merch. I still want that zombie toothbrush he has in the beginning for the record. I want that to be a real thing. Maybe it is. Yeah. So, okay. Do you want to get into the heavier stuff? Because I did not see this movie's big reveal coming. I don't know how you can, but I think it's a good job. What I'm talking about, who the witch was.
Looking back on it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
While I'm engrossed, if you're engrossed in the film, you don't see it coming.
No, because the town has built up the myth that she's a traditional, cartoony, hunched over old witch, and then holy shit, they killed a kid.
Killed a legit kid, and she's not happy about that.
Can't blame her. Though that's also that's just a horrifying. I just love the fact that after he has that flashback vision of her trial and realizing the truth, and then it also helps put the zombies in context. So you're not sure why they're here. It becomes apparent they're not trying to eat your brains and be violent, but it's because they can't talk and stuff. You're not really sure what is their connection to this? Why have they been revived? How are they linked to the witch, and what's their purpose? And I just love that after that scene, he flashes, he comes back into the present, and it's just 30 seconds of silence. He's just in their library, and they just come out and look super ashamed because I think they know what he's realized. And he just immediately just quietly goes, "How could you?" It's this purposefully quiet and I think it's there for the audience to digest it, just like he is.
I know a couple of people who that kind of thing coming. They knew that the zombies weren't particularly evil because they weren't chopping on people.
Oh, well, that's made clear early on, because the joke is that the people become the angry mob because they're like, zombies, but you still don't know their purpose.
You don't know the purpose, and the message itself is, I think it's more important than the actual reveal of the zombies aren't bad. And I think, oh man.
Well, they did something bad, but even then, when they finally talked to him, they're like, it was the biggest mistake we've ever made. And we had to suffer for hundreds of years because of her. I mean, because of it, because that's her retribution.
Well, what I'm saying is that the reveal that, the zombies weren't really the super evil entities that we thought they were. It's more, the people who I spoke to about this, they thought it was pretty predictable, but not in a sense of Aggie. I'm talking about Aggie. I'm talking about the witch's identity. Yeah, the witch's identity was something different, and I think that was a strong build.
Yeah, they pulled the rug out from under you, because even when she's doing that cloud face, it's the stereotypical witch. So you kind of think this is just going to be some like faceless or stereotypical villain if you ever see them in person. No, and
it's just a kid. It's just another bratty kid.
And I think she's a distant relative of his, because I think she has the same name as Goodman's character, Mr. Pendergast, who he says is his great uncle. And watching again, I was like, she has his eyebrows. So yeah, I can see it. It would also explain why those two had supernatural powers as well.
And you know what? Ending fight.
Man, I was waiting for us to talk about this.
I've seen a couple people who are like, nothing really happened to ending fight. I'm like, but it did though. Like when I listened to the behind the scenes, they didn't want to do a standard fight the dragon, beat the.
It is not. It's not. It's all the physical action is on her side, and it's brutal. She's like electrocuting him, trying to impale him, slamming him. He goes through some shit.
There's a legit element where he has to like run. He has to like jump around platforms.
Oh yeah, like floating. She makes the whole area become like a bunch of floating islands.
In that sense, it becomes a bit of a video game, but I'm not knocking it for that.
I play it.
I play that shit too. That whole scene it ramps up so brilliantly.
It gets so emotional.
Like, she's so fucking mad at him, and she wants him to stop talking. And there's this giant like electrical explosion, and it's like a huge wide shot, and like, oh god, like the debris just goes everywhere. Like, oh man, and it's just like there's like a nice settle like afterwards,
and the music too.
And you see like all the destruction that just happened. You're like, how did this kid survive this? This is awesome.
Yeah,
so
I do.
Cool.
I think I do realize like if he hadn't gone through to her, she would have killed him eventually. But this is kind of, I kind of wonder how people feel about its kind of moral about kind of that, she's been doing what she does to make those who killed her suffer. But the problem is, obviously, at this point, she's done it for so long, she's hurting innocence. And Norman is trying to wake her up to this, like, that's turned into the same kind of monster you were trying to fight. And the kind of stuff that, like, I think after once, he snapped out of it and they had that final, more subdued scene, she talks about, like, but what about the people who have hurt you? Haven't you ever wanted to hurt them back? And his response is, yeah, but what good would that do? And that kind of made me think, like, yeah, would that make them better people? Would it not have repercussions for him? Like, that's a harsh but noble thing to think about.
What happens when you become the monster, or if you've always been the monster? Like, do you continue to let the pain continue? Do you just shrug your shoulders about it, or?
Well, that's the thing. Like, she became what they thought she was.
Become better, and that was the cusp of their last conversation together. Like,
yeah, and the way he finally got through to her was to bring up, think about those who did love you, and she remembers her mother.
And that's a really good message to go out on. I think, man, ParaNorman is really strong. I love that.
I mean, the idea of accepting unorthodox people, that's a noble one, but one we see a lot of in family movies. But this one is a little more, I feel like that could be a little more divisive one, but it's, the kind of pacifist, higher road, don't sink to their level approach. That's a good one.
Now, for things I didn't like about the movie.
Sure.
Wow. So remember when I talked about Coraline being a little derivative of video games, and
Which part of this was a video game to you?
oh no, I'm not getting into video games. I'm talking about like modern day pulp culture. Like you were talking about like how the meme was kind of unnecessary in Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the whole Scooby-Doo part was a little more dragged on than it needed to be.
Do you mean the van or research? Which part?
Kind of a running joke of they were in a van and someone, let's see, the police officer was like, "Oh, it's one for your meddling kids," and then there's Velma or the Velma-esque character in a room giving people directions and giving the cast directions what they need to do. I felt that. All right, I'm like, okay. Kind of a throwaway. Second time, I know you're doing it intentional, but third time, the audience is not dumb. We can move away from this motif now.
That's funny because I never thought of Scooby-Doo watching this.
Well,
I feel like it's just a general throwback to 80s style stuff. The same vibe that Stranger Things goes for.
And you know what? If it was left up to subjectivity, then I would have just been like, you know what? That was just me. Just sitting in the theater thinking that. But during the behind the scenes, they were like, yeah. That one character that was calling, that was talking to them over the phone. Yeah, we thought it would be funny if we pulled from Scooby-Doo and thought, what if they just left Velma home and they just went about their business? They're doing the cool shit. I'm like, oh, why? It's one of me out the movie is what I'm saying. That's all.
Okay, that did not occur to me before. I feel like my only real issue is. I feel like it's with almost all films. There's still some jokes that fall a little flat. Or there's one of those, like you mentioned that police officer. Like her first line is like, "Up, some people are littering." And she like finishes a big gulp and throws it in the ground. Like that's kind of an obvious joke. And there are a few little things like that scattered throughout that film, but there aren't numerous enough to drag it down. And I do just want to talk about one of the last jokes, and there's another thing about like a kind of doing some things that most family films still don't. I hinted earlier, the punchline to the sister hitting on Mitch the whole movie. I think you know what I'm getting at.
That was great. I loved it.
Yep. All this thing is, and here's the thing. Before I saw this movie, I listened to some podcasts, and there was one that they didn't spoil it, but they said like there's a joke at the end that you could kind of view as somewhat groundbreaking for family movies. And they didn't say what it was. But when I watched it, I was trying to keep a lookout for hints of it. And then I picked up on early on, like the fact that she's being very flirty with him. Like the first scene, she's not wearing a shirt, and she's like running her finger over him. And he's just like, oh yeah, okay. And for people who see the first time, they could just chalk up to him being a dope. But then at the end, like, you want to get your movie sometime? Yeah. He's just first he gets her name wrong. He's like, that's great, Kathy. You're gonna love my boyfriend. He loves chick flicks. And you see her face drop like, gosh, shit.
Is so disappointed, and it works.
Well, it's also great because he is not. There's nothing about him that's stereotypically gay. Like he's a big beefy jock, and that's true to life. And
so I mean, like and minorities come in, whether or not you're gay or black or transgender, you come in like. There's like a whole gamut of what kind of personality you can actually.
Yes, there's not. Those classifications don't put a limit on your personality or appearance and stuff. And I think this was a way of Laika both joking, having a respectful joke about it, and also demonstrating that, like the last character you'd expect by like character cliches and designs.
It was really cool.
Yep, fun way to wrap it up.
I think we can move on from.
All right, yeah. So. We are halfway through. Now let's talk. I'm kind of curious what you have to think about this next one, which is Boxtrolls. I think it came out in 2014. They typically have like a 2 or 3 year gap between each of their movies. And this is their least critically successful film. Financially, not so much. I think it was on par with Coraline and ParaNorman. And I kind of agree with that. But at the same time, I still think it's a quality film. So I don't know how you feel on that.
Boxtrolls is... I want to see Boxtrolls in the theater. Because the trailers made it look awful. The trailers, the commercials.
I think I know why. Did the Boxtrolls remind you of the Minions?
I think that's part of that, but it didn't look interesting. And whenever a movie, or specifically an animated movie, a modern day pop soundtrack, or a really popular song to get people to come to the film or come see the film, that's an automatic red flag for me that says...
Did they do that in trailers? I don't remember.
What's the song? Oh, here we go. And feeling in my soul.
Okay.
whatever song that is.
I can't tell you.
That's what they played in the commercials, and you've heard it. You've heard it like 1,000 times before.
I'm sure I have.
Song 1,000 times before. Heard that in a trailer specifically for an animated film, immediately turns me off. It immediately says this film cannot stand on its own without another property to make it sing. It's kind of what I felt with Black Panther, because they kind of did that shit, because they played like they played like
the Kendrick Lamar songs.
A couple of songs, and I was like, I don't know.
I made me go, legit like the Black Panther soundtrack. I forgot to bring that up.
Sure.
Like it adds some good variety, and the tracks are pretty catchy.
I like the music in Black Panther, but the sound choice for the trailer did not make me want to see it. The elements of the film made me want to see it.
Right.
And unfortunately, the song and the shot choices that they were choosing for the commercials of Boxtrolls made me not want to see it.
Did you see it in theaters, though?
See Boxtrolls in theaters.
Oh, wow.
When I saw it, Boxtrolls on Netflix, I was interested. I did it out of curiosity. I was like, let me give it a shot for once. I didn't love it, but I did like it.
Yep,
it was
same here. I think
it was a lot better than the commercials gave him credit for.
I think this is my least favorite Laika film, but that's not saying like, oh, it's their equivalent of like Cars 2 or something, because it's still good.
It is not Cars 2.
No, but I think I know two reasons that I think it was lowered a bit for me, and maybe scared some people off too. This is the least creepy of their movies, because even when we get to Kubo, that's not a paranormal type movie, but it has some intense moments. This, not so much. I think maybe some of the moments with the villain might scare little kids, but other than that, not so much. And also, I feel like this is probably their least. I would say this is their least memorable overall cast of characters, writing wise.
Yeah, because
like, I couldn't tell you anything about Eggs. Like, he's this kid. Like, even like we talked about Norman. Like, he's not a super hyper character. He's not like making quips or anything. But we talked about he shows his insecurities and such. Coraline, she's a brat, but that makes her not standard. Like, I feel like Eggs is the time they kind of did fall victim to bland kid protagonist syndrome.
Yes, they did. It's a bit of a shame, because I liked him, but I didn't.
He didn't get on my nerves, and I like the concept of him, but yeah, they're just not that interesting. And this I can extend to some of the other characters too, like the main girl Winnie and her dad. Like, they are so fucking stuck up. Like, it makes them unlikable at points, and the villain, Snatcher. Now, I love Ben Kingsley, and the performances and design are fun. He has plenty of fun moments, but he's still a little. You've seen villains like that before. Some Catcher, hell-bent on doing that. Like, do you see the Shaun the Sheep movie?
I didn't.
That's something Aardman's done a couple times. Like the villain in the Wallace and Gromit movie, that there's like an animal control guy in that. Like this one stuck-up British guy who's all about like gotta get these animals, and that's literally that is Snatcher's deal here. Now, granted, his end goal is very clear, and the result of it is something I like. And the performance is fun. He has some funny moments, and also the Boxtrolls themselves. The fact that they can't talk really, that kind of limits how attached you are to them, and the fact that there's just so many of them.
I think this is weird. You can sense the frustration in my voice, because I'm trying to find reasons to really what Boxtrolls was trying to do, and I think on a technical level, Boxtrolls was super impressive.
Oh, I love the world in this. Like when you get those zoom outs, and you see like this city is very vertical, like, and it's also a very different time. Like in this and Kubo, they go for totally different time periods, but this is like kind of, you get the sense like 1900, but there's still like a steampunk element to some of the technology. It's a cool world.
It is. I don't think. I know there are a couple people who are out in logistics who are looking over this with a fine-tooth comb, who are going, "Oh, well, set in London," or "Oh, it was a really grim piece."
Yeah, it's a mostly British cast.
There's no way American audiences would enjoy this, and I'm like, yeah, they would if it was written better.
People like Aardman.
Wow, came out really pretentious. I'm sorry. What I meant to say was that in Boxtrolls did not inspire me to like it any more than I did on a technical level. Before you mentioned the word eggs, I didn't know I forgot who the main character was.
Yeah,
and I honestly feel really bad for that, because it's a cute looking character, but there was nothing really amazing that the kid
I don't like
for.
the designs in this as much as the other ones. I feel they could have stylized them a little more. The Boxtrolls themselves are fun.
Yeah, the Boxtrolls themselves are fun, and I like Snatcher on a performance level. I mean, like you said, he's more of a catcher kind of enemy, where he's like he's basically Cruella de Vil, honestly, in that regard. And he wants to fit in a society that does not accept.
That's what I like about him, that he's not just like, oh, I hate animals. And that's like one of the lines, the main line I wrote down from this, because like there are good funny bits of humor with the dog and stuff, but the thing I thought, like one of the main morals that it actually does, I think, get across pretty effectively. Snatcher's last scene, because he's all about like, I want to be part of this high society, wear the hats and eat the cheese, even though he's definitely allergic to it. And so he forces them to do this at the end, like basically taking Winnie captive and stuff. And I love the fact, I do love the parts where he eats the cheese and he's just so allergic, like the skin immediately swells up. He looks like a monster. Yeah. But do you remember what Egg says to him in his last moment?
I remember it being very profound, but I didn't remember it after the fact.
So he has one piece and he's already swelled up, and like I think Eggs knows like any more of it will kill you, and he just points out like, look, everything you've been working towards, everything you're aspiring to, it's not about making you who you are. You've been doing all this not trying to make your own identity, but because you look at these existing ones and be like, I have to be in this. I have to be, even though by all factors he shouldn't be. And he's trying, like, it's a last ditch thing, sowing some sort of compassion for Snatcher, because he kind of recognizes there is a tragic element to him, which is interesting. And I think Snatcher's last thing is like, this is what I choose, and he eats it. And that's a great defeat, where like there's a pause and he starts going like, it's not that just cut outside to the far view of the city.
He chose the way he died. He chose the way.
In the end, he has no one to blame but himself.
I think that in and of itself, I think the overall message of Boxtrolls, I think the fact that they tried to do something particularly interesting by explaining that, do you really want to become a part of this really snobby rich class, or would you rather be happy in the muck with these ugly looking trolls? Because these ugly looking trolls can get down, and they kind of can.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be friends with this really snobby little girl who gets off on the macabre, or are you okay with it's very. It was a little strange with that kid, but this movie had a lot of character quirks that I actually admired. I
want to make it clear, because I feel like we spent most of the time talking about its flaws. This is still a good movie.
I like the fact that Snatcher is fucking allergic to cheese, and he has
the most allergic he can possibly be. The animation for how he swells up is so good.
I like how effective and how brilliant he can be in finding these Boxtrolls. Like, he's become really good at it.
Yeah. It's become his life. It's part of his life goal. Like, they are his key. He says the key to the social status he wants.
Foil. I'm sorry. I like his bumbling sidekicks.
Oh, I do want to talk about those guys, because they do some. I love that running joke.
They are meta as shit. And
it's the two. And do you know who did their voices? Chris?
I was here. I said who like 3 times. I guess my mic didn't catch it.
The two main guys who have the actual conversations are Richard Ayoade and Nick Frost. Also, Simon Pegg plays the Egg's real dad, who pops up, kind of crazy a few times. The crazy one, that little short guy with the glasses who's just kind of manic and mostly grunts?
I know who that is. Yeah.
Who is it?
Yeah. I forget his name, but
Tracy Morgan.
He was in a car accident, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's recovered, but
like a long time ago. Yeah.
Yes, Tracy Morgan
from the
and you legit cannot tell it's him. Like, Tracy Morgan is the guy who I feel like if you hear him talking, he kind of always sounds like he has his mouth full. That's just the way he sounds. And I don't know what he did for this, but he legit like changed his speech pattern to a little goblin man.
And the way that
because he says stuff, he doesn't just yell. And even when he says stuff, like I would never guess that. I wouldn't be able to tell that was him if you didn't tell me. So props to him.
Out is like all up in a fury that he's just like leading him on. Oh, he's helping to lead it on, and he's just yelling, chanting.
Yes. But also we didn't touch on the other two. The fact that there's that running gag, and you talk about the meta stuff. like they spend all the way convincing themselves like we're the good guys, right? These are nuisances. We're doing what the right thing is, and it's kind of just this gradual realization they have that they've been on the wrong side this whole time. And so I think it's no coincidence that those two survive and Snatcher and Tracy Morgan's guy don't.
I really like the film knew people like characters like that by keeping them at the end of the film and having them talking about the nature of their existence.
I remember when Felipe brought this up on January Admission, he really like that part was the part he dwelled on. He talked about more than anything else in the movie, even though it's a minor thing. But it is one of the more clever. Like I can't think of another movie where the sidekicks have done that as a constant revolving joke.
For those who are listening, Boxtrolls is pretty solid.
You should watch it.
I think it's probably the weakest Laika film, only in the sense that there are a lot of characters on the surface that you've seen before. You've been through this song and dance before. It's still technically a pretty impressive visual masterpiece of a film.
Yes, very unique world even by Laika standards, and pretty well paced and fun. But yeah, it just not. It generally doesn't hit the same highs as the other movies we're talking about, and for me, that's mostly due to the characters.
All right. That's
so
really all I had.
So do you want to move on to our last one?
Yeah, that's really all I had to say about Boxtrolls, unfortunately.
That's okay. That's pretty much all I have to say. Other than it kind of blew my mind to find out that one of the main Boxtrolls was voiced by Steve Bloom.
Nice.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that's the Toonami robot, Spike from Cowboy Bebop. I saw him at a con once. My main memory of the panel is him singing Barbie Girl in like his sexy Spike voice.
Off topic.
But
completely off topic. There is, speaking of Spike, there is like some GIF running around where
you retweeted it.
Some amazing animator like put like a 3D animation of Judy
Hopps
talking to Judy Hopps from Zootopia, flirting with a non-committal 2D animated Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah,
it is fucking mesmerizing.
It's really well done. Even though I'm sure it's going to result in some weird fan art. Don't show that to the I Will Survive guy.
I'm like, the internet is going to go nuts with this, and I have seen some really weird Zootopia shit. I mean, and that's completely separate from the guy you just mentioned.
Well, I mentioned Steve Bloom. That's the most famous character. It makes sense you bring it up.
Yeah,
we should do Cowboy Bebop someday because you still haven't seen it, right?
Actually, have the DVDs. I've seen half of it.
Do you like what you've seen?
I am kind of kicking myself for not watching it before.
I told you. That was like one of our earliest episodes. And at first I thought you were saying you don't like it, and I got all upset. And then you were like, no, I haven't watched it. I'm like, oh, dude, you need to change that.
I bought it a few months ago, and I started watching it, and I was like, dude, this kicks ass.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be an episode soon, I think. I might pick it.
There's a lot of great thematic elements in this show.
Pretty much everything about it is great, I'd say. So now that's enough about Steve Bloom. Let's move on to our last film, because I'm actually kind of curious what you're going to say about it based on some comments you've brought up in the past. The most recent, Kubo and the Two Strings, 2016 summer release. This is, I guess you could count Boxtrolls as fantasy too, but this is like fairy tale fantasy, and with a different aesthetic, since it's meant to be in like a feudal Asian type land. And yeah, this is... Chris, I remember you had said you did have... I might be putting words in your mouth if I'm remembering it wrong, but I think you said you had loved the opening act and never quite matched those heights for you.
Kubo and the Two Strings that year probably had the strongest opening for any film of that year. Like Zootopia came out that year too. Mm-hmm. And for a Disney film which showcases itself as master storytellers, like you think they'd have that locked down. Not saying that what they did
I like the opening
was I'm not saying what they did was bad, because I like that opening too. Zootopia had an amazing opening. Kubo knocked that shit out the park though, because things that you can do when you're forced to narrate the opening of your film to grab your audience really quickly. So one of the things that you do, like in Moby Dick, is to command your viewer into action.
You command them to call you Ishmael.
Yeah, you command them to call you Ishmael. And Kubo and the Two Strings, they command you to listen. They command you to that Kubo.
Don't look away.
Yeah, that Kubo is telling you.
I gotta say,
Blank.
you keep saying Kubo. I think I joked it sounds like Cubone in the two strings. It's Kubo.
Kubo. I'm being a dick. I'm sorry.
Cubone in the two strings. Cubone is looking after his comatose Marowak mother.
Kubo and the two strings. The way that Kubo opens is, I'm sad to say that Kubo, the film, doesn't exactly keep that momentum from.
I'm halfway with you because I do think the middle portion is kind of weak compared to the best parts of Laika stuff. But for me, both the opening and closing act I think are great. And I'm guessing you didn't quite
tell me
what.
Tell me what you think.
Well, I don't want to skip straight to the end, but I will say, like, we're talking about, like, yeah, look, that opening scene with his mother on the boat is visually amazing and intense. Like, she's getting her head against a rock, this baby almost dies, you realize it's lost its eye, and then, cutting to, like, we're talking about Norman, like, Kubo has a sad day-to-day life, too, at least his interactions with his mom, because they established that injury just kind of messed her up. And for like half the day, she can't really move or talk, and he has to do the cooking and kind of taking care of her. And it sucks because when she's constant, she's pretty awesome. And then the opening town scenes, like when he does, they kind of smartly establish the supernatural element right away with him doing the storytelling with the moving origami. And then they quickly establish the sinister element with those sisters. Like there's some scary imagery and moments in this too, and the two masked sisters are a big part of that. I also think that the first couple scenes, once the journey starts with Monkey, like those interactions with the whale, like use up all your questions, no, don't talk, eat. Great stuff. It's the introduction of Beetle where I think things slow down a bit. Like, I feel like for some reason, a lot of his jokes, he's the jokey character of the trio, don't hit as well as a lot of other Laika jokes do. Like, how many times have you seen a movie where somebody does something, then points and goes, he did it? Like, they even showed that in the trailer. Like, that's, like, they thought that was a standout joke. And nothing against Matthew McConaughey because he did his damnedest.
Well, the thing I learned from Boxtrolls was never to take a film's commercial too seriously.
Yes. I know that.
So,
but
that's what I learned.
That is symbolic of some of Beetle's moments, like kind of lowest common denominator types of jokes in terms of wit.
It is. So I tried not to pay too much attention to those jokes. And just went to the theater expecting a good time.
Yes, I did get that.
Unfortunately, those particular jokes by Beetle, I don't remember a single joke.
I didn't write them down, but I did rewatch this. But like it was a lesser batting average than I'd expect from these guys.
Yeah,
from both Laika and McConaughey.
Now there was one particular joke that I did outright enjoy, and it wasn't so much as
from Beetle.
Monkey.
Which one?
It's the point where they're about to have their final battle and they take a rest and they take a sleep, and Monkey and Beetle they share a nice little emotional moment.
Yeah, they bond over time.
The night before. The morning after, Kubo wakes up and he's like, it's time to go, guys, and Monkey and Beetle wake up with a serious case of bedhead. And if you're who has seen very saucy sex scenes in the past, you know that kind of look that they have with that kind of bedhead.
I missed that.
That's a thing. That's a legit thing. Where when they wake up, it kind of looks like that they did it the night before. the way the monkey kind of messes her hair and trying to puts it back into place. And
that almost feels like open to interpretation. I have to watch it again to see like their positioning and emotions. But
it's a little subjective, but not by much.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I like Monkey in general. Like someone who's very hard edged, but her maternal edge still comes through at points, and that ties into. Okay, are you ready to talk about the last third?
I'm ready to talk about the last third
because I also do want to touch on I feel like it's awkwardly handled the reveal of who Monkey actually is because it kind of comes out of nowhere in its execution. But the idea is because she's been saying like I'm this charm of yours, your mom with her last energy brought me life. No, the monkey is the mom. Her human body was killed, and she transferred herself to the charm with Kubo, and she didn't want to focus on that. Of course, and so the other thing is she's seen Beetle bonding, and Beetle established like he's cursed, but he's also an amnesiac, but he's pretty sure that they know about Kubo's dead Hanzo, and he's like, I think this was my mentor, my friend. Let me help you. So they get to another thing, because they do kind of repeat the Coraline 3 orbs thing. It's not as video gamey. The dialogue and setup environments are a little less obvious, but it is kind of still it makes the journey portion feel a little more segmented. So they go to this fortress, and this is where this movie, the problems I had, kind of redeemed themselves, because the truth comes out when the sister reveals Beetle is Hanzo. He wasn't killed. He was cursed and made amnesiac. And this is where I told Mark when we meant on his episode, because I don't remember how we brought it up, but I mentioned that I think this has one of the boldest last acts in a family movie. And hopefully you understand why I'm saying that. So the reveal is made, and they've knocked the other sister out, so they're having this tender moment, and just bam, Beetle is gutted. Like, the sister walks up and just impales him, and he is dead like that. It's sudden. There's no sense of goodbye, and it's very unheroic, and it's just like shit. And you already knew they had set you up, like, Monkey's is dying. And then the scene ends, and it's just another like super silent moment where it's the next morning. Like, the sister's mask is shattered, she's dead. Beetle is a corpse. The monkey is a broken charm, and Kubo's just sitting there crying. And I was reeling. I'm not gonna lie. That was just I never anticipated the movie taking this direction.
And so I, on the other hand, also felt this way. No, no, I actually agree with you. In that, I did feel like that. Okay, yeah, the parental reveal was. I feel like it could have been handled a little bit better.
I was confused at first, because it's like he has a vision when he's underwater where he sees the monkey and goes, "Mother?" And I didn't quite understand until he came out, and then he says, "Mom," and then he cuts to that hours later, and I'm like, "Wait, what?"
The writing there was
clunky,
It was so focused on making it so surprising that, or at least it felt that way.
But it didn't feel clear in the reveal.
It didn't come across as clear. I'm wondering whether or not they even needed that angle at all. And
I don't think they did, but actually no, they probably did so that they could incorporate it into Beetle, like his growing relationship with her, and it makes the reveal of who he is more impactful than if the monkey had never, did not have that history.
See that? Of the emotional beats landed. Some of the comedic parts, some of the slow parts that were a little bit more of world building and fighting giant enemies or like world bosses.
Like that big skeleton, that was a big hyped up thing, because it's apparently the biggest stop motion puppet ever made, because they had to make it to scale with the normal characters, and it looks cool, but it's not. I didn't find it to be that engaging a scene.
I was actually a little confused on character placement when characters were moving around on screen. Like, it felt like some of the staging was off. Like,
it can't have been an easy scene to do.
Yeah. I completely respect of how challenging.
Yes, pulling it off at all is an achievement.
And as a person in the audience, that kind of took me out the film, because I wasn't sure where characters were a moment before the camera cut. It kind of felt like I felt a little confused as to where characters were a moment before. That's what I'm saying, is that
it's funny how we're talking about both in writing and shot composition. We have scenes where we're a little confused.
That shit is not easy to do. Yeah. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying, as a viewer, it didn't.
I guess part of it is that we're also taking the task because their first three movies weren't really as guilty of this.
There's that. But I think conceptually, I favor Kubo much more than the other three. Like, world, the fantastic character designs, the way that it's structured. Honestly, lean towards this one the most.
This is their most technically ambitious film. The landscapes are big and open, which is their first three films were not. They have to do a lot more effects incorporation, like making the characters interact with water and all sorts of stuff, or even just scale stuff like that skeleton monster, like fighting on a boat in the rain. Like, think about all the logistics that had to go together of that.
And those kind of thematic elements, such as like reincarnation and dealing with souls. And
there's a scene that's just them kind of talking and meditating on the act of death and what the idea of crossing over from it. But okay, are you ready to talk about the end, like after the death?
Well, kind of
Go ahead.
The kind of stuff, that kind of stuff, that the whole spiritual aspect of it, that's the shit I live for, which is why a little harder on Kubo, because I love what it tries to do a lot, and I guess it just didn't. It just didn't land in some cases.
For me, the end helped make it land. Like, I do think it's guilty of some sag in the middle, but I like the opening end. And so, but I also like just that ending. Like, it's also kind of a pulling no punches kind of thing, because there is no resurrection of the parents, and even the last. Well, let's talk about. This is the first Laika movie to make me cry, and hopefully you know what scene I'm talking about. The end of the final battle.
Yeah. Yikes.
Man.
That was some battle, wasn't it?
It was, but it's also, oh man, one of the other, maybe the most ingenious thing about the writing is when the meaning of the title finally hits you. Because
oh yeah,
you don't really,
you're like,
yeah, you go in like when I first heard this movie, I was like, why is it called that? I just didn't know. And you go in for a while, after a while, you forget it's called that. You're just watching this movie, and the fact that, it also helps, lessen the fact that they're searching for these MacGuffin items when at the end he realizes he spent this whole movie doing them, he's doing the battle with them, and he just tosses them all aside. He just takes the strings that are his memories of his parents, does it to music, and that last speech, Jesus. That I remember one line that really sticks out, because, man, just the idea that the Moon King is all about, like, this kind of, it's a difference of ideals. The Moon King is about this very sterile immortality, but the idea is you'll live forever and you won't feel pain, and screw all these lesser beings and stuff. And Kubo is saying to him, for every horrible thing down here, there's something far more beautiful. And he realizes, like, you want the eye. It's like that line, like,
I know why you want my eye. Because without it, I can't look into the eyes of another and see their soul, their love.
And that's already powerful enough. Then, his magic summons those. I don't think they're not the actual ghosts, but like the lanterns show those projections of the dead. That's what makes the villagers come out, and that projection is going like,
these are the memories of those we have loved and lost. And if we hold their stories deep in our hearts, then you will never take them away from us.
The movie turns into that huge monster. He's like screaming in his face, like, I have taken everything from you. I've destroyed it all. It is gone. And then Kubo drives home the importance of memories. It's a little Coco-ish in the importance of looking back on the people and things that shaped your life. It gets really profound and just really, really, really moving. That whole finale was really where I thought I was recovered. And it is also interesting, the Moon King's fate. It's kind of an iffy thing because he survives, but now he's robbed his powers. He's amnesiac. And you realize that the townsfolk aren't going to exile or kill him or something. They're going to reshape him and be like, you've been a good man, and you'll keep being a good man. And Kubo's going to live with them. It's really, really fucking bold. I've talked about other bold things and moments and aspects of Laika movies, but this goes for it. This, like, I can totally imagine that there were families who tried this with really upset kids, because it's so bittersweet in the end.
Hearing you talk about it kind of makes me want to take a second look.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I know. I walked out the theater. I got to give Laika the credit that it's due, because the way that they structure their messages, they're usually really strong and really profound, and they have a great way of looking at things. Bring out the positive nature in people while still highlighting a lot of the negatives and even the pathetic nature of how it treat itself or even just exist by itself. What I got instead from this film was that, and kind of was at the end where he has this family. He now has this new family, and basically his grandfather or this. It's
his grandfather, yeah.
The shell of his grandfather, or where his memory has been wiped, and now he's going to be living as basically a senior citizen in an old folks home. Thinking of myself like, yeah, but Kubo, I felt more sad than I was supposed to. I was like, but
no, I actually do think that the grandfather's fate is meant to make you sadder. It's not a super sunshine and roses thing, because I'm sure that people saying like, he doesn't deserve that, which you're probably right, but
yeah,
it's kind of showing that I think it's kind of expanding on the ParaNorman idea. Like, don't you want to hurt those who have hurt you back? And they're like, and Norman's like, would that actually change anything?
So I'm super petty. So when it comes to shit like that, I'm like, no, you should put his ass in jail because he tried to murder this entire village.
I don't know if I could have brought myself to do that forgiveness, but I think it's just. I remember another podcast saying, like, that's something you never, ever, ever, ever see family movies do. And it's a noble intent. And I got to give him credit for that. And I did cry again when it ended, that last big shot of, we finally see that projection of his parents. But it also touches on his speech. He's still, like, he's touching on the fact that he's not going to be able to say properly goodbye to you. He doesn't know how this works. And they never spell out the truth of the afterlife in this world. So... there's no ambiguousness and tragedy that the movie literally closes on.
That's what I had a hard time with in this film, was the note of ambiguity. Like a cut and dry happy ending like ParaNorman had, or how Coraline had. And I'm not saying every movie has to have that. Yeah, or Boxtrolls. I'm not saying every movie has to have that right off into the sunset kind of positive vibe. Some of my favorite movies don't have that.
But you feel like that would have suited this movie better?
It would have, honestly. I mean, I'm... with me only because it felt so open-ended that it also almost felt like a contradiction that Kubo went through all this, doesn't have what he needs, but got something else as an alternate. He basically has his grandfather who kind of killed his parents.
I mean, there's also the fact that he's stopped the biggest evil in the world, so there's that.
This is true, and I'm not discounting that at all. It gives Kubo a chance to actually work towards having a family again, even if it's not like the proper nuclear family.
Yeah, well, the village liked him. Like, there's that other older lady who's like, he does have a family at the end, just not not the same kind that he started with, and not the same kind in the middle of the movie. And
you're absolutely right in that. I'm still wrestling with Kubo.
You know what?
I'm not hardline. I'm not hardline against how it ended, but it didn't. Yeah, or four. It didn't complete for me, and I think I need to have another watch of it to really get the sense of.
I vote that sometime in between this and other episodes, you watch on Netflix and then give your quick updated thoughts on the first opening of an episode.
Because there are times when I really dug Kubo, like even though I had problems with that giant skeleton figure. That shit is amazing, seeing them build it after the film is over. I love the scenes when Kubo is telling the story with his
that's fantastic
characters. Like, there's a lot of fantastic stuff in this film. I'm wondering why I still wrestle with it to this day, where it's like, I can go over it again and again and again, and even a second viewing or a third viewing for that matter.
I mean, in some ways, it's Laika's most unorthodox film. So
that's
some
true.
people might just find it hard to express how they feel about it because it kind of plays by its own rules at points.
Part of me doesn't feel as complete because I have a grasp of what I have a loose grasp of what they're trying to do.
Excuse me.
It just doesn't feel that finished for me. It's still phenomenal, I think. In fact, I think I put it. I think it's a tie between that and Coraline for me. ParaNorman is number one in my and something about Kubo keeps it at the number 2 or 3 spot for me.
Is Boxtrolls the fourth? Chris?
Yeah. Sorry, I said yes, but I guess I didn't catch.
Yeah,
Boxtrolls. Yeah, Boxtrolls is the fourth one for me.
It's funny. I think I might actually have the same order as you too, which is ParaNorman is definitely my favorite. I think it just speaks to me more than the others in terms of how it comes together as a whole. And Coraline and Kubo are hard to decide because I think Coraline is pretty consistently super solid, and Kubo is in certain portions all over the place, but the highs of Kubo are really, really high. So it kind of balances out to something. I have to watch them back to back to be able to proper assessment. And Boxtrolls is also good, but we've touched on what makes it a lesser film than the others. So I
can give it a higher rating.
Yeah, and I feel like we can start bringing things to a close, but just some interesting notes about Laika, and this is more just tied to depressing things about Hollywood. Kubo was their first box office disappointment. That made markedly less than the others. I think it barely made its budget back. Basically, it got its ass kicked by Secret Life of Pets.
Okay.
Yep. You can't really blame anyone but the audience for that, though. And here's the other thing. Thankfully, this didn't sink them. I've actually heard for years, one of the reasons that their movies are kind of bolder compared to other animation studios is, I can't completely verify this, it's just what I've heard. You can kind of thank Phil Knight for this. Like I said, that rich investor. Movies like this, typically, you might have trouble getting distributors to fully financially back something that risky, but he is a billionaire. Like
someone is keeping them afloat.
I think it's him. I think it's him. He is apparently like the 35 richest guy in the world or country or something. So he has tons of money to throw away, and I guess he really does care about this stuff. And good for him. I appreciate that. Philip, you're listening. Thank you. And so I actually have heard like they are working on another feature. I read it was supposed to come out this year, but considering we still know nothing about it, I'm kind of counting on it getting delayed. But I'm looking forward to whatever they have next, as long as they keep doing what they do and have a solid batting average. Yeah. And another thing, maybe it's to make some money back. So his son Travis has been an animator at the studio for a while, and Kubo was actually his first directorial film. Do you know what he's directing now?
He's directing now.
The Bumblebee movie, Transformers spinoff.
Oh, cool. Okay. So,
well, I wouldn't call it cool.
Well, I mean, we'll see.
I mean, maybe he'll make a better Transformers movie than Michael Bay, but that's not a sign of quality, even if it's not hard.
That's what I'm. When I say cool,
I read it's being set in the 80s because it's a prequel.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. Is that whenever someone tackles Transformers, if it's someone who actually cares about the material, so hearing someone that wants to tackle a Bumblebee spinoff, hearing them set it back in the 80s. They kind of do, whether or not they actually give a shit.
Who knows? I mean, it might not be his fault. If the script's shit, like, what can you do other than direct it well?
That's honestly what I'm reading here on Wikipedia is that Laika has optioned Malloy's fantasy novel called Wildwood. So
okay.
They're doing adaptation off that, and Philip Reeve's fantasy book called Goblins. So I'm not sure. I've never heard of either of those two.
No, I hadn't heard of Coraline until they adapted it either. I hope Goblins isn't just Boxtrolls 2.0, but I feel like they wouldn't do that. I'm keeping my eyes open for whatever they do next, and there's a good chance that we'll talk about some of their future projects on this show. They kind of make stuff tailor-made for guys like us, like imaginative animation that can sometimes have more to say beyond like the standard kind of slapstick we expect.
I hope that whatever they create next, that they're able to financially get the money for it and knock it out the park.
I hope Travis Knight keeps doing it for a while, and if he dies, his will says to give a good portion to Laika. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Hollywood is forever unpredictable, so who knows? But I'll always be grateful for what they've already done. I can say that much. So I think that's going to bring things to a close. This was a fun episode, as long as I expected it would be. That's been about, 2.5 hours. Shocker.
Hey. Yeah.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if this is another split in half episode. What?
It's fine. It's fine with me. Like, first half Black Panther, second half.
Yeah. Black Panther and the other stuff we talked, then the Laika for another. I feel like we're about to hit I'm trying to get one episode out every 2 weeks, preferably on Monday for consistency. I could probably get that opening portion out tomorrow if I blitz it tonight and tomorrow. I actually have tomorrow off from work, so there you go. I can do it. So this has been a fun episode to do, and we've teased in the past. So next episode is going to be our big 25th episode, and I've said every time we do one of those, 25, 50, 75, 100, like there's multiples of 25, I kind of can view this as little milestones. It is crazy to think we're coming up on. We've done it for about a little over a year. It is crazy to think that it's a year and a half at this point. I think, which is kind of crazy to dwell on. I can only imagine if we're still doing it like 5 years from now, we'll be like, oh God, we're old. I'm on other things. So for episode 25, I know that I would really. I feel like if I'm going to do picks on those episodes, I want to pick something big, like something very important to me that I hold in high esteem or high regard. And I've picked something. I ran this by you like during our Christmas episode. I think one of my favorite movies ever. And now that you've seen it, I think it's your favorite from that studio at least. It is mine as well. We are going to do the first, not Hayao Miyazaki's first movie, but the first one to officially come under the Studio Ghibli banner, Laputa Castle in the Sky. And
so excited.
I am super excited. This is a movie that will never get old to me. And to be fair, I did touch on it a little bit in our Emotional Moments episode. And I would say don't go listen to that before listening to this one if you haven't seen the movie, because I literally spoiled the ending. But go out and see it for yourself, because it's wonderful. Probably not hard to get your hands on either. I usually see, like, at Best Buy, a bunch of Ghibli movies and stuff on sale. I'm sure streaming has an option too. So that's going to draw us to a close. Chris, is there anything you want to say for the listeners? Now that I put you on the spot.
No, that's actually about it. I hope everyone has a chance to actually check out these Laika movies at some point. You can find Kubo and what else?
Kubo and Coraline on Netflix. Boxtrolls was in the past as well.
Check them out when you have a chance. If you're a fan of stop motion, or if you're just into something creepy, something weird,
something different,
you want to, something different. Like if you're tired of the same old family affair that you see in family animated movies, might be right up your alley.
Like that's one of the things I like most about them. They're distinct. Nobody else makes these kind of animated movies on as big a scale as them, stylistically and thematically.
I think you're going to have a good time if you check them out. So yeah.
And of course, we also recommend Black Panther. It's a great cultural touchstone and a great movie.
All those films.
Yes. So I'm John Fleury.
I'm Christopher Wade.
And what are those? Oh, now I'm part of the problem.
Yes, you are. You can't take it back. Commit.
It's forever recorded, or I guess get edited out, but no, I'm not going to.
Don't do that. I'll always remember.
Good night, everyone.